Hello, everyone listening, and welcome to our Media Studies project for economics, entrepreneurship, and project management. In the coming slides, we will be taking a closer look at the business model proposed by Alexander Osterwalder and Yves Pigneur in the handbook Business Model Generation and see how the 9 blocks of this model fit into Hazelight Studio. Hazelight Studio is a Swedish gaming studio with a team size of 65 that was announced by Electronic Arts in 2014 in light of EA Originals, a project by the publisher to help indie studios. Through EA Originals, Hazelight has been given funding for both of the 2 co-op centered games they have released to this day. More on that later. Let's get started on the first segment.
First of all, customer segments. It defines what customers the company is targeting. This is crucial to game developers. It is always important that the game has a clear direction. In Hazelight's case, they are aiming for a niche market. Their 2 games, A Way Out and It Takes Two, are both same type of game, highly story-driven multiplayer that can only be finished with another player with puzzle solving and actions. Secondly, value propositions. Every business needs benefits to continue their operation. There are a lot of developers competing out there in the market. In order to get a share, developers need special selling points for that. There are not much similar games as Hazelight's games in the market as mentioned, and they have an interesting price strategy. For multiplayer games, usually each player needs to buy their own copy. However, for Hazelight's 2-player games, only 1 copy is needed for both of them. Another way speaking, this is 50% off for the game price, which highly encourages players to try it. About channels, Hazelight has few own channels. The official websites, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and some partner channels like pages on PlayStation, Xbox, Steam. Their official website gives all-round information about their studio and their works, which helps players evaluate their value proposition. And all the other social medias raise awareness to their games and events, which leads to potential sales growth. For purchasing to after service, since they work with Electronic Arts, all of the sales-related things are taken care by their publisher, EA, which are the partner channels. Regarding these, let's talk about customer relationships.
On the earlier mentioned channels, Hazelight has about 33,000 followers on Twitter, 4,000 likes on Facebook, and 10,000 followers on Instagram. All channels post the same content in the same time intervals, about once a week, but these posts are mostly interacting with other brands, like EA for example, rather than the customers themselves. Personal assistance can only be available to customers if they reach out by themselves through an email address that can be found on these various channels. Hazelight is part of EA Originals, which secures some funding and marketing assistance by Electronic Arts. And while not much is known about the details of this business relationship, it can be assumed that the funding is in exchange for foregoing Electronic Arts' usage fee for the games created by Hazelight. EA also gains recurring revenues from Origin members who pay to have EA Play Pro in order to gain access to these 2 titles. And obviously there's the asset sale component to it. It Takes Two has sold over 5 million copies, and A Way Out's last known sales numbers were from last year, and it was about 3.5 million. Now, prices obviously may vary on different platforms and sales, but it is ultimately a fixed price list. And also, the studio managed to sell the movie rights to It Takes Two to Amazon. This was a conclusion of a bidding war, and this is a dynamic pricing due to the auction aspect of it. If we look at the key resources, which are obviously tied into these revenue streams, there are some intellectual properties. Now, the studio has specialized in co-op games, and even before the studio was founded, core members worked on Tales of Two Brothers, which is one of very few games that has a similar gameplay concept. So there is a certain level of know-how here. Now, on the legal side, it is a bit harder to get a grasp on things, as Hazelight actually had to abandon the trademark of It Takes Two, as their claim was appealed by Take-Two Interactive. Nevertheless, they are still allowed to retain the name of their most popular game. And obviously, every studio in the EA Originals roster gets a dedicated publisher from EA and is also guaranteed a certain amount of funding.
As Hazelight is a game development studio, the most important key activities are about production. Their main focus is on the conceptualization and development of unique gaming experiences. As they put it themselves on their website, at Hazelight, it's very important that we are able to develop the games we are passionate about in the specific way we want to make them. However, in order for the studio to be able to focus on this key activity, their key partnerships are of utmost importance. Luckily for the studio, in 2014 they were able to partner with Electronic Arts under their EA Originals label, who from then forward functioned as their game publisher and helped with marketing and distribution, all while leaving creative freedom to Hazelight. This relationship can be described as a strategic alliance between non-competitors. Both parties are involved in game development, but EA is focused on games of different scale and genres, which does not make them direct competitors. By partnering up, both parties gain something out of this relationship. Hazelight itself can focus on their key activity, game development, while EA takes care of other important activities like distribution and marketing. EA, on the other hand, is not only able to add unique gaming experiences to their portfolio, but they also want to improve their public image, which had been declining in the previous years, by supporting and financing indie game studios. Apart from their close relationship to EA, Hazelight of course is also dependent on a few buyer-supplier relationships which are needed for their development process. One of the more important relationships is with Faceware, who supply them with the necessary technology for facial motion capture, which Hazelight's games rely on. As for the cost structure of Hazelight, one can see that they are a value-driven company. In game development, it is not always possible to minimize cost at all time, and the development of a new title takes several years. Like with Hazelight's latest game, It Takes Two, which was in development for at least 3 years. Fixed costs like the salary of the 61 employees and maintenance of licenses for example, the usage of the Unreal Engine and their motion capture studio, make up most of their expenses.
In conclusion, when we apply all of the 9 building blocks, there are some clear strengths and weaknesses to be noticed. For Hazelight to operate in a value-driven manner is mostly made possible due to their key relationship with EA, since they provide the money for the development process, and due to the EA Originals program, Hazelight is able to keep all of the revenue from their game sales after the development costs have been paid off. This enables them to focus on their main key activity, game development, which is another strong building block. However, we found that Hazelight is lacking in terms of customer relationships, since they are not very active on social media and are not actively trying to foster proper connections to their players. Other weaker aspects of Hazelight's company structure, such as channels for selling their games, revenue streams, and key resources are handled by EA for them. However, this key relationship could also turn into a disadvantage in the future. If Hazelight is not admitted into the EA Originals program for their future games, they would lose a lot of important resources, which could leave the company in a difficult position.